I, Lucas Harper, was 17 years old. My parents, Carla and Robert, were coming back from a party in Uptown. It was nearly midnight. The neighborhood was too quiet. Cold wind pushed leaves across the asphalt. I saw their car vanish down the poorly lit street through my bedroom window. That was the last time I looked out that glass and saw peace. When I heard the first scream, I thought it was a nightmare, a choked, urgent scream. I knocked on their bedroom door. Complete silence. I grabbed my jacket and went downstairs. The hallway was dark. My sneakers creaked with every step. My heart pounded like a desperate drum. I let out a sharp breath. In the entryway, my dad was pouring a glass of water for my mom. He tilted his head back, crushed the cup, and choked. I set the glass on the floor. Shattered glass, water spilling, drops soaking into the carpet. The smell of iron hit me before the sight. Blood ran from my dad's mouth. A cut, far too deep to be from metal. I stared in horror as my mom broke into a dry cough, more blood coming with every spasm. "Dad!" My voice came out hoarse, choked. He raised his hand, uselessly, as if pointing to something behind me. I turned and saw the living room swallowed by something. Half shadow, half beast. Dark, filthy fur. Claws bigger than my hand. A low snout, teeth gleaming in the dark, lit by a sliver of moonlight slipping through a shattered window. My dad let out a groan. Fell to his knees. My mom tried to scream again, but only managed a moan before the creature pounced on her. The rake of claws tore through her back in a single stroke, and she collapsed with a dull thud. Her head jerked sideways, sparks of pain flashing in her eyes. Everything moved too fast. I saw the shadow pull back, heard the crack of her neck under the assault. Then nothing. Just strangled, lifeless screams. I ran. Threw open the front door. Saw the monster force its way through the window, scattering shards of iron and glass. The floor cracked under its paws. It smiled at me, a smile full of crooked, sharp teeth. The white fur around its mouth was stained with blood. It stepped forward, calm, determined. My heart cracked with fear. My legs obeyed, but my brain screamed, "Stop, go back, run to the street." I screamed for help, rang the neighbor's doorbell. No response. Only the echo of my breathless voice. I slipped into a side alley. The sound of cars stopped. The silence crushed my skull. My throat felt clogged, my hand over my mouth to keep from throwing up. Blood spattered my sleeve. A cold drop rolled onto my hand. My fingers trembled, trapped in red glints. It was my blood. I gathered myself, ran to the front of the house. The monster stood there, still as a hunter, watching the street. A sharp howl escaped its nostrils, a warning. A fine shiver ran down my neck. Without looking back, I ran to the corner. Red eyes followed me. I lost myself in the dark. My heartbeat exploded in my ears. The sound of wind, my breath, my heart. I kept repeating, "Don't stop, don't look, run." I reached a park, the field dimly lit by flickering lamps. I thought I could hide among the metal rails of an abandoned playground. Off to the side, I squeezed between two wooden toy chests. The ground was cold, pieces of metal bruising my ankle. I took a deep breath and leaned behind the slide. My gaze searched beneath my jeans. The wind spun cans between the slats. I stayed like that, motionless, breathing heavily. My heart thumped in a muffled rhythm. Every lung beat reminded me I was too alive. I shut my eyes for a second, counted every movement in my body not to deceive myself. There was only silence. The only sound now was me. The moon's light hid behind the clouds. Everything went dark again. My ears searched for anything. Hell's movements. I closed my eyes tighter, pressing my ear to the wood. I heard a metallic scrape, a clink of metal, probably its claw dragging along a pole. I inhaled deeply to keep from trembling. I opened my eyes, tears mixed with sweat. I saw feet, dirty boots. The monster had come around the slide. I twisted my knees, trying to brace myself. It was quick. A stomp on the concrete. The wood shook. The beast let out a low growl that even the tide could have heard. Then it shook the park like a toy, smashing benches. The shadow passed over me. I turned my head, saw its silhouette again, four forelegs, arched spine. Blood dripped from its fur. A light above him made his hood shine like dirty silver. It was the last moment of certainty. Then darkness. Only his breath could be heard. "Let it out," said the monster, in a gravelly, stony voice. I didn't understand. Everything froze. He started growling again, advancing. I tore my hands from my eyes and curled up, hugging my knees. He tried to frantically pull the slats off the slide as I curled up, crying. The sound came from the claw striking the metal, living dye from my legs. The scent of iron flooded the air. I was mute. The monster ripped off a plank. I looked at the broken part. I could fit through. I looked into its eyes, distant. The low howl turned into a claustrophobic roar. It still hadn't touched me. A flicker from the electric light. The creature froze. It was like a weapon. A siren wailed in the distance. I heard that sharp note before the sound of 10 engines. Engine smoke, a trap of light. I dragged myself back as far as I could. A squad car arrived. 2 officers jumped out, guns drawn, yelling, "Get down! Get out of there!" The creature looked at them, lowered its head. A long, mournful howl. It seemed angry. They opened fire. 5 quick shots. In its face, red exploded into the gray sky. It dropped to its knees, heavy breaths, lungs full of ants, empty eyes, a dull thud. Then the beast's body twisted. It rose, blood gushing onto the asphalt. It ran into the dark alley. The last thing I saw was the officer's baton, their eyes wide. I was dragged back, hid behind the car. The monster escaped, left a trail and flesh behind, left one question. What the hell was that? The desperation left me when I felt the cold metal of the gun. A cop held my hand, soaked in blood. He turned to me, calming me with a firm voice. "You okay, kid? Stay back." I saw my reflection in the headlights. Dirty jacket, pale face, no words. The open wound in my world, the wide pain in my lungs. I would never sleep the same again. That night destroyed everything. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Watched, questioned, drugged. Animal attack, the report said. Wild dog, maybe. No one wanted to hear my version. Not the detectives, not the doctors, not the psychologists who looked at me like I was a traumatized lunatic. The media did its part. "Teen survives brutal attack," the headlines read. But no one talked about what really happened. No one wanted to accept the truth. I left the hospital with my arm in a sling, 7 stitches in my shoulder, and scars on my face that would never fade. But the worst was inside my head. In the silence of night, I could still hear the howling. Smell the metallic scent of blood in the air. See my mother's face twisted in pain, and the silent scream of my father being pierced. I went to live with my Uncle David in Cicero, a few minutes from Chicago. A tough, quiet man who kept his van spotless and his shotgun loaded. He never asked what really happened that night. He just told me to keep my head up and my eyes sharp. But I couldn't forget. And I started looking for answers. Every night, lying on the hard mattress in the basement, I researched. I started with animal attacks in Illinois, then expanded to neighboring states, Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota. I found strange reports. Bodies found mutilated, missing parts, with wounds that didn't match any common animal bites. People attacked in forests, parks, suburban streets under full moons. The official reports always said animal attack, but the descriptions were different. Surgical wounds. The limbs torn off with extreme force. Claw marks over 6 inches long. Lower jaw completely removed. I started building a map with red pins. The patterns were there. The attacks spread like waves. And always under the same conditions. Isolated areas, cold nights, absence of witnesses, or witnesses who disappeared soon after. I tried speaking with a few survivors. A mother in Kenosha whose son was killed at a campsite. A fisherman in Duluth who saw something too big come out of the water and drag his friend away. A drunk old man in Detroit who swore he'd shot a demon covered in fur. They all looked at me with the same fear in their eyes. A fear I knew well. The same fear that made me wake up screaming in the middle of the night. That's when I began to understand no one was going to do anything. No police, no government, no one believed or wanted to believe. And that's when I decided, if no one is going to hunt it, I will. My father taught me how to hunt. Since I was a kid, we used to go to a cabin outside Joliet. He taught me how to set traps, identify tracks, and shoot. I remember when he said, "Hunting isn't killing. It's understanding the mind of what you're chasing. It's becoming invisible. It's anticipating." And that's what I started doing. I took what I had, my father's old rifle, a backpack with clothes, a notebook with attack notes, and a map. I also packed an old phone with offline GPS, a powerful flashlight, and a hunting knife that belonged to my grandfather. Before leaving, I passed by the old house. It was sealed off, but I got in through the garage. The smell of rot still clung to the carpet. The furniture covered in dust. The bloodstains still there, marking the living room floor. I looked at all of it and didn't feel sadness anymore. Just rage. A kind of rage that burns you from the inside out. I left with a dry heart and frozen eyes. My journey began in Milwaukee, where 2 teenagers were found with their chests torn open, as if something had ripped them from the inside. Then I went to La Crosse, where a family disappeared, and only the dog was found, with its stomach open and bones twisted into spirals. In every place, I walked the attack sites, observed footprints, talked to locals, searched the forests. Some nights I heard sounds, distant growls, something breaking branches, heavy breathing too close. But it wasn't time yet. I was learning, listening, sensing the monster's presence. In each city, I wrote down more. The creature's behavior, the patterns, the timings, the way it attacked. Almost always by surprise, always in the dark. And it never left clear tracks. Until one night in a small town called Red Wing in Minnesota, I saw it. The image still burns inside me. It was a convenience store, 3 in the morning. I sat in the car, watching. A young man walked in. 2 minutes later, the door was ripped off the wall. A body, or something like it, entered. A scream tore through the air. I ran to the side of the building, looked through the window. The floor painted red. And something with arched claws hunched over the body, tearing off pieces with its mouth. I aimed the rifle, but my hand shook. My finger wouldn't respond. Then it saw me. Its face rose, eyes glowing in the dark. A growl, low, like a warning. And then it vanished. Disappeared into the dark as if it had never been there. I stood frozen, sweating, heart exploding. I felt the smell of urine in my pants. For the first time in a long while, I felt real fear. Not past fear, the fear that I wasn't ready. But one thing became clear that night. It knew I was hunting it, and now it was watching me too. From Red Wing on, I started to notice the pattern more clearly. The attacks followed a line, almost as if the creature was migrating, always heading north to colder, more forested, more isolated areas. It seemed strategic. I left Minnesota behind and went to Duluth. I hit the road at 2 a.m. A police outpost along Highway 35 was sealed off with yellow tape. 3 squad cars, 2 ambulances, and a black bag being carried by paramedics. I didn't need to ask. It was another victim. I parked and slowly approached, backpack on my shoulders, military jacket zipped to the neck. A young officer smoked outside, eyes wide like he'd seen hell, and returned. "What happened here?" I asked, trying to sound like just another curious passerby. He exhaled the smoke slowly, without taking his eyes off the void. "Wild animal," he said, but his voice trembled. "Tore the guy in half. His partner fired until the gun jammed. Said it was too big, too fast." "A bear?" The officer shook his head, looking at the ground. "Bears don't have eyes like that. That's what he said. That the thing's eyes weren't animal. They were human." I stayed silent. He glanced at me. "You seen anything around here?" "No," I answered honestly. "But I saw something like it. In Chicago." He stubbed the cigarette on his boot. "Then you understand." I understood. And I was more certain than ever that this wasn't just an animal. This thing thought. It chose its victims. In the following days, I followed the trail to Superior, then Ironwood. In each city, a hushed story, a body found in pieces, a missing dog, a scream heard deep in the forest. No one connected the dots, but I did. The trail was clear. The creature was moving through ancient forest paths, using trails no one else used. Hunter paths, forgotten dirt roads. I started sleeping in cheap motels, rifle always within reach. At night I reviewed maps. In the morning I went to the attack sites, studied tracks, sniffed the air, looked for tree marks, signs on the ground. Sometimes I found scraps of clothing. Other times, fragments of flesh. And then, in Marquette, everything changed. It was a small, cold town surrounded by dense woods. A woman had been found without a face, literally. The skin ripped off with precision as if someone had removed a mask. The newspapers spoke of a satanic cult. Authorities called it an animal accident. I visited the attack site, a trail near a lake. The air was humid, filled with rotting leaves, and there was blood. A lot of blood, spattered on rocks, scattered through roots. My stomach twisted. But the worst came when I walked into the woods and found the tree. It had claw marks, deep, long, vertical, as if something had leaned on it with absurd strength. Around it the soil was sunken, signs of something heavy, bipedal, that had crouched there for some time, watching. As I examined the area, I heard a twig snap to my right. I turned quickly, rifle ready. Nothing. Silence. 2 more steps. Another crack. Now to the left. My heart pounded. I crouched, weapon raised. Tried to control my breathing. Cold sweat ran down my back. The sound of something breathing, deep, guttural, reached my ears. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it was close, very close. Then suddenly a strong metallic scent filled my nose. Blood. Fresh blood. I spun instinctively and saw for a second the eyes glowing between the trunks, the dark fur, the exposed teeth. I fired. The shot echoed through the forest. I didn't wait. Fired 2 more rounds as I ran without looking. The slippery ground tripped me. I fell to my side, hit my shoulder. got up in panic, kept running. I left the trail and reached a dirt road. An old car drove by. I screamed. The driver braked, startled. An old man, a local hunter. "Take me to town, now!" I shouted, pointing the gun at the ground. He saw the desperation on my face and didn't question it. We got in and sped off. Only when we were far from the woods could I breathe. "What did you see out there?" he asked, eyes still on the road. "A monster," I said. "One that shouldn't exist." He stayed silent for a while, then muttered, "You're not the first to say that." He looked at me seriously, then added, "Maybe it's time you talk to someone who knows what you're facing." That's how he told me about an old man named Elijah, a healer who lived isolated near Escanaba, and who, according to him, knew more about these things than anyone. By then, I already knew. The creature was testing me, watching me, leaving intentional clues, as if it were guiding me somewhere. And now I was heading toward something bigger, something I might not be ready to understand. Escanaba was the kind of place that seemed frozen in time. Empty streets, distant houses, rusted signs at intersections. People walked silently, heads down, as if they carried a weight no one dared name. The old hunter who told me about Elijah dropped me off a few kilometers from town at an unmarked trailhead. The forest there was denser, the air damper, and there was a constant feeling that something was lurking between the trees, as if the whole forest was breathing. I walked for nearly 2 hours before finding the cabin. It looked forgotten, covered in moss and rotting wood, but it showed signs of life. A fire was lit, clothes drying on an improvised line. I knocked on the door. Silence. I knocked again, harder. The door creaked open. A thin man, hollow-faced and deep-eyed, looked at me with the calm of someone who had seen too many horrors. "Are you Elijah?" He didn't answer. Just opened the door wider and nodded. I entered. The inside of the cabin was suffocating. It smelled of smoke, burned herbs, and something metallic, like dried blood. Hanging on the walls were strange objects, animal claws, carved wooden stakes, bones tied with leather strips, symbols etched with a knife. "You're hunting it," he said, sitting in a low chair. "I saw it up close. It attacked me. Killed my parents." Elijah nodded, as if he already knew. "It's not a wolf. It's not a man. It's something ancient, a cursed one." "What is that?" He gave me a hard look. "Someone who was bitten and survived, but didn't remain whole. He transforms, but doesn't control it. He's stuck between two worlds. A monster, but still carrying traces of who he was. Worse than a beast. More cruel." "How do I kill it?" He stood slowly, went to a drawer, and pulled something wrapped in thick cloth. He unwrapped it in front of me. Bullets. Long, shiny silver. Silver. You have to pierce the heart. Only then will it stop. If it's just wounded, it'll flee and return. Ice ran through my veins. I remembered the fight in Red Wing. I hit it, but it fled, survived. "So it's still alive," I murmured, "and it remembers you." I stayed quiet for a moment. Then I asked, "Teach me. I want to kill that thing, and any others if they exist." He didn't ask why, didn't need to. He saw it in my eyes. We started that night. Elijah taught me to identify signs, claws on tree trunks, circular tracks, the scent of nocturnal glands. He showed me how to set simple, silent traps. Taught me to shoot again. Not like a regular hunter, but like someone with only one chance. For a week, I trained, slept little, woke to the sound of distant howls. The forest seemed more alive out there. And more dead too. The night before the full moon, Elijah handed me a box with silver bullets, each one marked with hand-engraved symbols, He said it wasn't magic, it was respect. To remember what we were facing. I took the rifle, now reinforced with a night scope. Took my grandfather's knife too, now with a silver blade soldered to the base. I strapped everything to my body, put on the thick, dark leather jacket. "Where will it attack?" I asked. Elijah answered calmly. "He's already chosen. You." I left the cabin before midnight. The forest was silent, no wind, no crickets. The full moon climbed slowly through the treetops. Each step made the ground crackle, my breath short, stuck in my throat. I walked for half an hour until I found an old abandoned barn near a clearing, a perfect spot for an ambush. I stayed there, waiting. The silence began to shift. A sound, low, almost imperceptible, filled the air, like a deep drum beating from within the earth. Then, cracks. Branches snapping. Heavy breathing. I crouched behind a pile of wood, aimed in the direction of the sound. The rifle's green scope blinked. Nothing. And then, it appeared. It emerged from the darkness like a grotesque wraith. Long fur soaked in blood. Dirty claws. The eyes, red, like burning coals. It saw me and smiled. It lunged. I fired. The first shot hit the shoulder. It growled, fell to the ground, crawled behind the pile. I fired again. The bullet ricocheted. It moved with absurd speed, vanished. I heard footsteps behind me, turned. Too late. The claw struck my chest. I felt the tear. The pain was lightning ripping down my spine. I fell backward, tried to roll. The creature was on top of me, its breath hot, reeking of rotten flesh. Claws pressed on my throat. I lifted the rifle and fired into its jaw. Its head snapped back. It screamed. A sharp, human-like, desperate sound. Black blood gushed. It pulled back. I stood up, staggering. Blood poured from my stomach. I fired again, hit the leg. It fell to its knees. But it was still alive. I tried to get closer. It slashed my face. I flew into the barn wall. Everything spun. My body burned. The monster looked at me for what felt like eternal seconds, and fled. Ran into the forest, leaving a trail of blood and howls. I passed out right there. I was found at dawn by Elijah and 2 locals, dehydrated, wounded, delirious. I spent days unconscious. When I woke, Elijah was at my side. "You survived, and so did he." I looked at my bandaged chest, my stitched hands. I felt broken, but alive. "Next time," I murmured, "I won't miss." Elijah nodded, handed me the notebook with all the notes, and said something I'd never forget. He was just the first. The pain was constant. It didn't throb. It pulsed like an electric current running beneath my skin. My stomach was full of stitches, 32. A cut on my face had nearly taken my left eye. My shoulder was dislocated. Ribs cracked. Elijah took care of me at the cabin during the first few days. I couldn't stand, couldn't eat. Sometimes I could barely speak. Fevers came and went like waves of heat soaked in delirium. I dreamed of teeth, red eyes, my mother screaming. During the early mornings, I listened to the sounds of the forest. It never felt silent again. Every snapped branch outside made my heart race. Every distant howl froze my blood. But I knew. It hadn't come back to kill me. Not yet. Not because it underestimated me, but because it wanted to break me slowly. That's what that monster did. It hunted with intelligence. It was sadistic. It wanted me to live in fear, to taste death every day before swallowing me. On the 5th day, I managed to stand. The body ached, but the rage was stronger. Elijah helped me walk to a fire pit behind the cabin. The old man stayed silent, watching my trembling hands carry the rifle. When I fell to my knees, he just said, "You're alive. That's what matters. Now if you want to finish what you started, we've got work to do." In the following days, Elijah intensified the training. This time it was different, more intense. He treated me like a broken warrior, but a determined one. There was no compassion, only instruction. He knew I had one more chance, and so did I. I began to relearn everything with a bruised body, setting traps, tracking in the dark, loading the rifle with new silver bullets, and understanding how that thing thought. "He's not just a monster," Elijah said. "He was a man. Still carries human instinct. That makes him more dangerous. He knows where you'll be before you even decide. So how do I hunt him? Let him come to you. But be ready." On the night of the next full moon, the forest came alive again. No attacks were reported in nearby towns. Everything was too quiet, and that was the most dangerous part. Because he wasn't going to repeat his mistake. I knew. He wanted to finish what he started. Let me die slowly, and now he was hunting me. We set up camp in a controlled clearing. We had visibility in all directions, traps set at strategic points, motion-activated lights, hooks with bells, and my rifle loaded with 6 silver bullets. Elijah kept watch in the cabin. I was in the center of the clearing, and I waited. The night crept on. A cold breeze passed through the trees. The absolute silence felt like concrete. Then, the sounds began. First, a bell. East. Then a crack. North. My breath hitched. I aimed the rifle, but nothing moved. Sweat ran down my forehead, my finger steady on the trigger. Then a howl. Not far. Very close. The sound of something big moving through the brush. Branches breaking. And suddenly, a scream. Human. Elijah. I turned and ran. Reached the cabin. Door broken. Blood running across the threshold. "Elijah!" I shouted. Silence. I entered slowly. The smell of iron was strong. The table overturned, glass shards, and then behind the stove. I found the old man. He was still breathing. Barely. A deep gash ran across his chest. "He used me as bait," he murmured. I held his head. "You're going to make it." He gave a weak smile. "Kill him." My heart beat in my throat. I ran out of the cabin with the rifle in hand. I saw the blood trail. Huge footprints sunk into the wet soil. I knew this was it, the last chance. I ran into the forest. Branches cut my skin, lungs burned. The sound of his footsteps echoed ahead. I followed. He was wounded, but so was I. He was bleeding, and this time, he wasn't going to escape. The trail led to an old abandoned railway tunnel. Dark, damp, a hole made for death. I entered. Each step echoed through the tunnel. The flashlight on my chest flickered. The stench was unbearable, rot, and then breathing. Deep, feral. "He's here," I whispered. The shadow moved. Huge, fast. He came from above. I fired, hit the chest. He screamed. I fired again. The leg. He fell. I tried to approach, but he struck me with his claw across my good shoulder. My body spun in the air. I slammed into the concrete wall. My vision went black. I crawled. Blood trickled from my lips. He walked toward me, slowly, like he was savoring the moment. He was hurt, bleeding, but not weak. Still a monster. I lowered my hand to the holster on my leg. My grandfather's knife. Silver blade. When he leapt at me, I rolled to the side and drove the blade into his abdomen. The scream was different, high-pitched, almost human. He staggered, backed away, fell to his knees. I stood with the last of my strength, aimed the rifle. Shallow breath. One last shot. I fired. The bullet pierced his chest. He collapsed, body motionless, blood streaming from his mouth, eyes locked on mine until the end. I dropped to my knees, cried, screamed, and laughed. I don't know how long I stayed there. But when I returned to the cabin, Elijah was dead. I buried him behind the clearing, loaded 3 more silver bullets into the rifle, because in the end, that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I stayed still for a week, no strength, no direction. I had killed the creature, or at least I thought I had, but something gnawed at me inside. It had been too easy. Not physically, I almost died, but in sensation, as if it had allowed it, as if it wanted to die. After Elijah's burial, I remained in the cabin, tending to my wounds. The food ran out on the 3rd day, water on the 4th. The silence of the forest bothered me more than the howls. And then, on the night of the 7th moon, I heard it. Not a scream, not an attack, a knock at the door. 3 dry knocks, like someone in a hurry. I armed the rifle and approached. I didn't open. I waited. 3 more knocks. No howls, no claws, knocks. From someone, or something, trying to sound like someone. Who's there? Silence. I looked through the window. Nothing. And then, a voice. You didn't kill him. And if you stay alone, you'll die like Elijah. The door opened slowly. Not because I'd unlocked it. It just opened. A figure stepped inside, short, hooded, face covered by a mask made of bones, thin hands covered in rings made of teeth. The voice was hoarse, broken, dragging words as if carrying the weight of centuries. Who are you? They call me Alman, but my name doesn't matter. I came to finish what Elijah started. The figure entered uninvited, stopped in front of the fireplace, threw some herbs into the flames. The smell changed instantly. The air grew heavy. My head spun. He taught you to kill one, but you need to know what you're really hunting. It was a werewolf. Alman turned his head slowly. It was one. Now, there are many. My stomach sank. What do you mean? He pulled out an old yellowed map and unrolled it on the floor. Red marks across the entire United States. He ran his finger across each point. Each one of these is an unregistered attack. Silenced, covered up. These aren't coincidences. It's an infestation, a bloodline that's returned. How did it start? He stared straight at me. The curse was never eradicated, only contained. Ancient hunters. Families who hunted these monsters, but they vanished, killed, or silenced. Now, the cursed have returned, and they're no longer alone. How do you know all this? Alman removed the mask. His face was scarred, old cuts, burns, eyes without irises, moons a deep white. But he could see, with something beyond vision. Because I was one of them, but I was cured. Elijah saved me, and cursed me to live with what I saw. I sat on the floor. The weight of his words crushed me. The creature I thought I had defeated was only the first piece. What do I do now? Alman picked up the rifle, examined it. You need more than silver. You need to understand the cycle. You must learn to identify the alpha, the one who bit the first. He's the one controlling everything. And if I find this alpha, kill him, and the others will weaken. He pulled out a box of new bullets, long, pure silver. Hand-engraved symbols, different from Elijah's. Deeper, older. These break the bond. Where do I find this alpha? He pointed to the map, northern Maine, a town called Millinocket. 3 attacks in the last 2 weeks. 2 disappearances, and 1 hospital patient in a coma, with wounds identical to yours, and most important, bite marks, but no infection. He survived? For now. But if he turns, there's no going back. I stood, took the bullets, the knife, reinforced the rifle, dressed like someone who knew they might not return. Alman placed a hand on my shoulder. This war is bigger than you, but it starts with you, don't falter. I won't. Before I left, he gave me one last warning. If you find the Alpha, don't hesitate. He'll look human. He'll speak like a human. He'll beg, but don't be fooled. I know monsters. I can recognize one. Not this one. This one will look like someone you love. I didn't answer. I got into the car Elijah kept in the barn. An old Jeep, but still running. Fueled it with the cans stored in the back of the cabin. I left at dawn, headed for Maine. And as I drove down cold highways, through sleeping forests and towns too small to matter, I thought of only one thing. How many more are living among us, waiting for the next full moon? Millinocket, Maine. A town that seemed frozen in time, hidden among dense forests, with narrow streets and constant fog. I arrived 3 days after leaving. I was exhausted, starving, and strung tight as wire. The cold bit through my gloves, but none of that would stop me. I could feel it. The Alpha was here. I started at the police station. I pretended to be a criminology student from the University of Portland, faking academic interest in the animal attacks. A local sergeant with puffy eyes and trembling hands gave me weak coffee and spoke like someone needing to unload. We don't know what's going on here. First it was a farmer, Mr. Collins. They found him in the barn, ripped in half. Then 2 tourists, backpackers, vanished on the Baxter State Park Trail. And now, there's a boy in the hospital, in a coma. Survived, but he's covered in bite marks. The weird thing is, he doesn't bleed anymore, doesn't get worse, doesn't get better. He's just there. I'd like to see him, I said. The sergeant hesitated. He doesn't get visitors, just his mom. I'm not just a student, I'm a survivor. He stared at me for long seconds, then grabbed the keys to the squad car. At the hospital, the room was isolated. Low light. Machines monitoring vital signs. The boy looked like a corpse with his eyes shut. The bite marks on his arm and the side of his neck had healed unnaturally. Hardened tissue, grayish tone. I stepped closer, touched his forehead. Cold. He's not here anymore, I murmured. Just the body. The mind is already gone. The sergeant stood in the doorway, suspicious. What do you mean? He'll wake up, at the next full moon, but he won't be him anymore. I went back to the car, studied the map of the town. Elijah and then Alman had taught me one thing. The Alpha always hides in places where instinct still dominates. Remote spots soaked with a scent of blood, stained with memory of death. And here, that could only be 2 places, the decommissioned slaughterhouse to the east or the abandoned iron mine to the north. I chose the second. That night I went to the mine entrance. The road was covered in a thin layer of snow. Animal tracks crossed all over, but something was off. Among the deer and rabbit prints were others. Too deep, spaced too far apart. Something big was walking on 2 legs. I set 2 traps at the entrance, steel wires tied to silent bells and spikes rigged to tear flesh. Entered the mine with a silver-loaded rifle, flashlight strapped to my chest, knife at my waist. Inside was damp and dark. Water dripped with no rhythm. The air was thick with mold and rust, but there was another smell. Strong, sweet, and rotten all at once. Dried blood. Old flesh, and something more human. The sound of breathing guided me. And then, a voice. You came. Thought you'd take longer. Frozen, I aimed the flashlight. The light revealed a tall, lean man with gray-streaked beard and dark eyes, sitting atop a pile of stones as if waiting for an old friend. "Who are you?" "I've been called many things. Lately, they call me Father." "You're the Alpha." "I am. And you're the kid who thought killing one of us would be the end." The rifle trembled in my hands. I aimed at his chest. "Why didn't you kill me before?" "Because you needed to see, needed to understand the world has changed. We're inevitable. You don't want to kill monsters. You want revenge for your parents. This is personal. But with me, it's bigger." "Why kill innocents?" "They're not innocent. They're food. And some are chosen." "The boy in the hospital?" He smiled. The skin on his face twisted, deforming slightly. "A new wolf. Stronger. But still without control. He'll awaken and destroy this entire town. And the best part? They'll think it was you." I fired. The bullet hit his shoulder. He fell backward but stood too quickly. His body began to contort, bones cracked, skin tore. The sound was unbearable. In seconds, he was no longer a man. He was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. 10 feet tall. Black fur streaked with red, curved claws like scythes. His face a blend of man and beast, with eyes like pits of darkness. The fight began. He charged like an avalanche. I rolled to the side, fired twice more, chest and leg. He grunted but kept coming. Hit me with a blow that slammed me into the mine wall. My shoulder erupted in pain. Blood leaked from my mouth. I tried to stand. He loomed above. I aimed at his jaw and fired. His head jerked back. The beast staggered. I ran between stone pillars, hiding. The sound of him hunting me was pure hell. Claws scraping metal. His scent filled my lungs. I shook. I closed my eyes, waited for the sound to stop. Then I rose, last silver bullet in hand, knife on my chest. He was behind me. "You won't live to see what's coming," he growled. "I don't need to. I just need to take you with me." I leapt at him and drove the knife into his heart. The scream was like nothing I'd ever heard. A roar that cracked the mine's structure. He writhed, tried to pull out the blade, but his arms failed. His body fell to its knees, then collapsed to the side. I stood there, panting, waiting for him to get up. But he didn't. The flesh began to rot, the wolf shape dissolving into human remains. In the end, just a naked man, old, mortal. I tossed the knife aside, stepped back, lay on the blood and stone-stained ground. It was over. But then, I heard the first howl, not from him, from far away, several. In different directions, the sound of a pack awakening. I left the mine at dawn, covered in dried blood. My ribs ached with every step. My shoulder wouldn't move properly, but I was breathing. The Alpha was dead. And that should have meant something. But the howls still echoed in the forest, howls of different tones, distant, synchronized. They knew. I took the jeep from the camp and drove to the main road. At the entrance to the town, I saw sirens, ambulances, police, forest rangers, tape surrounding the hospital, a body being wheeled out, a nurse completely torn apart. No one saw who did it. But I knew. The boy had woken up. Too late. I drove right past them. No one stopped me. The car was too dirty. The license plate caked in mud. In the mirror, my face looked like a ghost's, sunken eyes, stained skin, hollow. On the radio, the news started coming in. 2 hunters found dead in Ontario. Mass disappearance of tourists in New Hampshire. Mutilated bodies found at the Vermont border. It was as if the Alpha's death had triggered something. It hadn't weakened them. It had freed them. They weren't hiding anymore. They were advancing. I returned to Elijah's cabin a week later. Alman was there. He watched me enter, didn't say anything for a few minutes, then placed a cup of something bitter in my hand. "Is it over?" he asked. "It's begun," I answered. He nodded. "They felt it. Now they know who you are. The kid who killed the first. They're coming after me? No, they'll avoid you, study you, follow you. Why? Because you're a risk. A traitor to the human species they want to wipe out. And because, deep down, they respect you. A little. I don't want respect. I want them all dead. Then you'll have to hunt them, one by one. Alone." I stayed silent, then laid the map out on the table. Drew a red X over Millinocket, picked up a black pen and marked the sites of the new attacks. Started connecting the dots. A pattern formed, a growing line heading toward Canada, and beyond. "They're migrating," I said, "forming something bigger. A pack or a colony. If they're smart, they'll gather in places where humans rarely go. But they'll keep attacking," Alman replied. "Always." "Then let's hunt them, you and me." He shook his head. "No, I can't anymore. My time here is done. You must do this alone. I'm just the echo of what's left." "And if I fail?" "Then everything ends here, in blood." I spent the following months traveling across the northern states. I got an old van, turned it into a mobile base. Slept in abandoned outposts, ate what I could find. Every new town was a possible hunting ground, or a grave. They were everywhere, in disguise. In Old Town, I killed one who worked as a mechanic. I discovered it from the claws beneath his fingernails and his night shifts. He realized I knew. Tried to run. Didn't make it. In Montpellier, I found a woman who led a group of survivors. She claimed her family had been killed in an attack 5 years ago. When I pressed her, I found the truth. She was a transformed female, and the group, a den. I eliminated them all. In every new city, I found clues, scents, signs, tracks, and fear in the air. Not mine, theirs. Because now I was the threat, and the more I killed, the more I changed. Not in body, but in soul. I no longer smiled. I no longer spoke. The world was just noise between one hunt and the next. There was no future, only blood and full moons. Then, one night in Burlington, while camping near a trail, I heard something different. Not a howl, a voice. "Harper?" Frozen, I turned. Nothing. "Harper, you think you can end all of us?" It was as if the forest spoke, voices in unison, male, female, children, whispers. "We're everywhere. We're in the cop who let you through, the doctor who treated your wounds, the girl at the store who sold you ammo. You can't exterminate us. We're the next step." I grabbed the rifle, spun in circles. "Come on then," I shouted. "One at a time, or all at once?" No answer, just silence. The next morning, I returned to the car. A note was on the windshield, handwritten. "You're not a hunter, just a lonely man, and you're surrounded." I looked around. Nothing, but I could feel it. They were there, watching me, studying me, provoking me, and deep down, waiting for me. And maybe, just maybe, I was starting to enjoy the hunt, because the pain didn't weigh anymore. The loneliness didn't matter. And the hunger for revenge was all that remained. The war was personal now, and the full moon, just another excuse to keep killing.